the agenda for everybody to see?
Might be able to. I'm at home, so I don't have access to
Give me
the
access.
network, but I can bring up my email.
Okay.
I have it. I printed it off. Do you need anything specific off of there, or?
I think it might be good just for everybody to kind of just see the
Okay.
see the items. If you give me permission, I can do it too, Seth.
Okay. Well, let's see here. All right, see if you can share, Dan.
Okay. All right, good. That's good. Thanks. Everybody can see that okay?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, cool. Good. Good. Well, welcome to the second meeting, everybody. Thanks for the work that you put in. And I think we're going to have some good discussions tonight. I think the first order of business would be to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Seth, any comments that you've heard on that so far?
No comments on that, but I think we should probably just step back and do roll call real quick.
Okay.
Stevens,
Here.
Bachman,
Here.
Ellis,
Here.
Williams, Craddock,
Here.
Muncy,
Here.
and Foley.
Here.
Okay.
Good. Good deal. Thank you. We'll move on to the minutes.
Okay.
Seth, you sent those out with this email, right?
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody does anybody have any additions or concerns about the minutes at all from the last meeting? Nope. Do we need to approve those, Seth?
Yeah, I think let's just go ahead and follow rules of order and go ahead and make a motion and a second and approve them.
Okay. Can I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Paulus.
Okay, Seth, thanks. Second?
Craddock, second.
All right, thank you, Mitty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I think we're in good shape. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to, I guess, Seth, we don't have any old business per se.
Right.
Maybe it'll come up later. Let's go ahead and move on to new business if that's okay with everybody. Why don't we start with the first, the subcommittee report, goal number 1, the walkable neighborhoods.
Okay, well, Mindy and I had our meeting, and like I think everybody else, no one showed up other than us. So we walked through our goals pretty quickly, and honestly, we were on the same page for most of them. For the short-term goals, just based on where the people are living and where the projects would be visible. You know, I think the connecting Old Salem to Main Street with either a sidewalk or a bike path. And I know that I'm pretty sure the plan has a bike path there, but whatever would get people to be able to walk from Taywood to Main Street, I think, you know, that's probably one of our bigger short-term goals. And then another one, the same type of idea. We already have our economic center, you know, our economic activities on Main Street for the most part, but the sidewalks don't connect all the way down Main Street. So that seems like a pretty low ball project that we could pick up and allow people to see and use, hopefully, in this fiscal year. And then another one is just the issue about signage. You know, making sure that all the walking places and city are the signage is appropriate. We think those 3 are doable in the fiscal year. So kind of wraps up our short-term goals, at least the ones we discussed. We really focused on where there could be an immediate use, you know, where that we don't have to wait to see whether or not apartments are going to go up to have a useful sidewalk, so that was kind of our thoughts with the short-term goals. With the long-term goals, one of the biggest issues for us would be identifying those areas that we either have the demo projects needed or housing upgrades. Just because I think if we're able to do that, then we'll be able to better determine what areas we can increase walkability. The second long-term project was one that was brought up in the first meeting, and again, there's already people there, but it seemed like a long-term goal because I'm not sure how it's going to work out. But connecting Summer Sweet to I guess Summer Sweet to Valley Brook is really where the sidewalk go. And I
To
know
49.
yeah, across 49. So if it stops at Valley Brook, and then if we did sidewalks down both sides of Union there, that would at least solve somebody's problem. Because I know someone was wanting to walk to Casey's in the last meeting. And then a third long-term goal is kind of contingent on what happens around these apartments, but Haber is an area. So, if development starts happening around there, we would definitely want to make sure the sidewalks are down as quick as we can get them up there. And then the last one we spoke of involved housing development. I believe it's called Spring Lake, is what my notes say. But connecting that to the high school through either sidewalks or whatever we could use there. Because I think the bike path comes all the way from downtown to the high school. And I think that's what connects the school to everything else. But then if you go past the school, continuing west, there's nothing connecting on the west side. So that would be our 4 long-term goals there. And those are all issues that we see as maybe either costing more money or requiring a little more infrastructure to complete. Did I miss anything, Mindy?
No, but we were talking, not necessarily just sidewalks, but maybe in some of those places, make it a bike path, a wider sidewalk kind of thing. So especially like that one on from Taywood down Old Salem to Main Street, because there's a lot of a lot of population in that area that, if we could get them access to Main Street, I think it would help.
Main Street was a big concern for me just because there's bus stops, grocery stores, and that's where economic activity is at the moment. Where at some remote locations in the city that aren't as well connected, they also don't have those bus stops or grocery stores. These are all things that we could justify the bill for, when we're like, why did you put a sidewalk down to Main Street? Well, here's a laundry list of reasons why it might be a good idea.
We also talked about
I'm sorry.
further development along Main Street. The sidewalks would be beneficial to draw people in for developing. So
I want to make a comment on that stretch that you guys had identified from Taywood to down to Main Street. I think it's really interesting that we talked about that same stretch, and also that Mr. Henning brought that up at our last council meeting. Now, to my knowledge, I haven't talked to anyone else about that. And to my knowledge, Kenny hadn't either. And I don't know if you guys have or not, but I find that interesting that three individual groups or individuals/groups have identified that as something that we think we need. just a statement.
So
I think
obviously it's
that's
out there.
interesting. Yeah.
Kind of not, well, it is kind of dangerous because I've seen a few wrecks on it just in the last year or two, but it's a narrow road already and it's pretty heavily traveled, so whatever we could do to increase not just the walkability, but even the drivability of that stretch of road is, something I'm interested in.
Well, I don't like the steep ditches on some, and where some of it is there. I agree with you. It's a narrow road. I think the biggest thing that we kind of discussed in our meeting, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but was the fact that, there's a lot of properties along there that, we don't have that wide of a right of way there.
Yeah.
And that would be, I think that would be I just don't know I don't know how quick that's doable. I mean, it seems to me like it's a great idea because it really connects, people would be able to walk
Right.
from those plats, all those plats up there to down to Main Street. But I don't know. I really think it's weird that 3 people have identified that in a short period of time.
Yeah.
We talked about, I think that on the one side of Old Salem, you have more space than on the other side. I mean, one side, the houses are close up to the road. On the other side, it seems like you have more side. So even if we could just do one side, it might be helpful.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good starting point. I could relate a story. Back in October, I did a small ride with Ken Braslow, who's a citizen of Clayton, and Chuck Smith, who lives in Vandalia, but is big with the Ohio Bicycle Federation. And we took off from Government Center on our bikes down Old Salem all the way to Maine, turned on to Maine and went through the hospital and into Gross Nickel Park, because we're kind of looking at how can we connect Clayton to the regional bike system. And boy, it was scary on a bike on Old Salem. I mean, garbage trucks and large trucks passing you by at high speed. So I think everybody is kind of realizing the importance of that connection and the importance of getting pedestrian and bicycle traffic off of the main road.
There was certainly, when I drove down today, I was looking to see how I, maybe envision it. There's a couple mailboxes that would have to come down at least. Mailboxes.
Right.
Dang, that's going to be it'll be an interesting discussion.
So, like, do you think, like, if you found an engineering firm, you said, hey, here's the problem, here's what we're trying to connect. Do you think there's a solution, Derek? I mean, some way there's got to be, or some way, I guess there could be some proposal put forward, right?
Even if we were able to, because you can definitely widen the road. Trying to think of my direction here. I believe what would be on the north side of Old Salem, you could definitely widen it on that side. And I don't think the property owners on that side would have as much of an issue. What I think is the south side of the road is where the issue is. And, maybe it would require a certain amount of overhaul to the entire street, which might turn into a long-term project, but that's above my pay grade. We'd have to get some civil engineers in here.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. I don't know, Mike and Seth, from the city standpoint, would that be something that we could, just the recommendation there, could we bring somebody in to take a look at how it could be done? Or I guess whether, but how it could be done?
Seth, I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be studied, and there's probably a way to do it. It might be, because of the distance, it might be a phased project.
Mm-hmm.
What we have, and what we're trying to do here, I guess, is to create a 5-year implementation plan, and maybe some of those larger projects get broken into phases, but we want to present something to council, that's fundable and that we can, in 5 years from now, we can say, we really realized quite a bit of Plan Clayton's objectives and goals. And, you know, I wouldn't want to put anything in there that I guess is a little too ambitious, but that's part of what we're doing. So we'll figure that out and get a, you know, good plan put together before the end of this. So, but yeah, I mean, it's something that we could look at, you know, internally at first, and then, you know, as you know, we get a little further down that road, maybe bring an engineer to look at it. But, you know, I could see right-of-way acquisition, that kind of thing. You know, look at the thoroughfare plan, see what the right-of-way should be on Old Salem, and, you know, go from there.
You know, I just a quick note also, when we talked about this in our subcommittee meeting, I had told Seth, you know, this, if you think of this, and people that are, everyone here except maybe Seth, because he's kind of new to the community, but if you know where Winger Road is between Taywood and down there at Company 7, you know, that great big hill.
Yep.
Well, I mean, back in the day, that was a narrow little road like Old Salem, with no sidewalks and trees and, you know, everything else on either side of it. And now it's a lot shorter span than what we're talking about. You know, the Old Salem span is pretty long. So it's obviously it's going to be a bigger issue overall. But if you go, you know, if you drive down that hill or up that hill on Winger now between those two streets, you always see people walking up and down there. They got a sidewalk all the way up.
Right.
And it really connects. You know, I don't know if the people are just out walking for exercise or actually walking down to that business district, but it opens up that possibility to that. And that's kind of what I envision. And like I said, it's kind of hard to envision that with, you know, that long span that we have, but they did it up there and it works. And I don't know how quick we'd be able to do something like that, but definitely I think we, you know, should leave it at least on the table for future discussions at least.
Yeah. I like to, Mike, what Mindy and Derek said about just the number of how, you know, like if you take it from the standpoint of like how many people could benefit from just that stretch, I mean, that's where the discussion, in my opinion, becomes really relevant, right? I mean, like to Derek's point, you wouldn't want to put it in a place that nobody would ever use, just, you know, logically, you know, but in this case, I think they're right. I think there's a lot of people who live around there who probably would find some value in that. So,
Yeah.
So,
well, these plats up here, like, I mean, if we had a sidewalk, I could feasibly walk there from my house. I probably wouldn't do that. I'd rather drive, but you know, but all these plats up here,
right.
you know, there's a lot of our population lives right in that concentrated area.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That was kind of my concern too. Like, you know, a sidewalk to nowhere that no one drives by. At the very least, people are going to.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking too, we really could break this into two chunks. You know, like Taywood to Garber is a chunk, and that would connect Taywood to Main Street because Garber has a sidewalk down it. So that might be an option, you know, and that's probably the harder chunk. So then maybe doing Garber to Main might be, I think Garber has sidewalks down what would be, I think, the west side, right, all the way down.
Right.
To Main.
That would connect Garber to Main, which might get the ball rolling. That might be an easier task to knock off, and it'll maybe give us a blueprint to take it all the way to Taywood or vice versa. But either way, more people will be connected to Main Street, even if we cut the project in half at Garber.
Yeah, and you know something, Derek, too, and Mindy, you think about this, like you do a couple of those kind of stretches, And I think the perception changes pretty quickly about, I mean, it doesn't take mile after mile of path to change the perception that, you know, the city's like emphasizing this stuff, right? And it might lead to more too. So that's great. That's great.
That was our thoughts on Main Street too, you know, because there's large chunks of Main Street where there's no sidewalk, and it's like, well, it's already there. You might as well just lay the strip down to connect it. You know, there's maybe a couple blocks here and there, and that would be a pretty easy one to score on again. You know, now bus stop access to Meyer, access to, you know, all the businesses down there, and you drive by it, you see it. You know, it's not a sidewalk to nowhere. You know, which is what I would hope to avoid, at least if I had any say.
That's good. Good. Hey, did you and Mindy send that document to Seth? Like, do we have that?
No.
No.
Okay. If you could do that, that'd be good. Like, and Seth, if you could share that, just so we could like see that in the map too, right? That'd be helpful. That'd be good. Any questions for Derek and Mindy about the first goal? And Derek, let me ask you, and Mindy too. Can you go over the long-term goals one more time? I kind of focused more on the short ones, just myself.
So one of the goals listed in the materials was to identify problem areas or areas that need demoed or housing upgrades. That was a long goal we had. Just I think that that'll be something that would open up the door to other projects. And then Summer Suite to Valley Brook, connecting those two neighborhoods, which is just a sidewalk from Summer Suite to 49, really. And you know, I think even on both sides down Union, that would kind of solve some other issues, and that could be a short-term goal depending on what happens to the rest of the projects or whatnot. And then
Whatever money we have.
and then the Haber is one. So let's say that these apartments go in, well, we're going to need some sidewalks down there. But if they don't go in, having that as a long-term goal, I think is more acceptable, because whatever development occurs there, if any, you know, we can keep our sights on. So, you know, if the apartments go in, if people start building out there, either way, that's more of a long-term goal for us. And then there's a development called, I believe it's called Spring Lake. It's kind of close to the high school, but it's not connected to the high school. So anyone east of the high school can probably, well, not anyone, but anyone close enough to the Route 40 and the high school on the east side can walk, but not from the west side of the high school over. So that would be connecting those neighborhoods. And from what it looks like, those areas are primed for development anyway.
And we briefly talked about the Haber Road issue at some point in the, you know, farther future, because we have that new development, Warner Village, that's supposed to be out there off of Haber. And so then you're going to have something connecting that to National, I would think. But that was kind of like, we put that on the back burner because we don't even have a neighborhood yet. So.
Okay. Thank you. This is good work. Anybody else have any comment or questions for Derek and Mindy? Good. Hey, Seth and Mike, just one question. If the city, so say for example, this committee wasn't talking about this walkable neighborhood issue, I guess here's a question. How would you get the most bang for your buck as a city for trying to connect people to more walkable neighborhoods? Would you look at population, and would you look at, as I think Mindy and Derek have done rightly, trying to connect the most people to the most major thoroughfares? Or, I mean, like what's your thought been prior to us talking about this?
Well, I will
Well,
say, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Seth.
No, you go ahead, sir.
Well, it just, well, for one thing, I blacked out my photo. Believe it or not, out of nowhere, I had a nosebleed. So I'm sorry about
Oh.
that.
Oh, no.
That's like probably the last thing you want to see right now.
Oh, sorry.
But
Dry
yeah,
winter air.
I know.
Right. Yeah.
Get a
right.
humidifier.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I
right.
take an aspirin a day, I don't know. Ever since I started doing that, once in a great while, this happens, but it had to happen right now. So, anyway, sorry about that. But I think that is exactly the mindset I would be in to look at these areas that we can impact the most people. You know, I don't know, kind of the quickest. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that. You know, these guys, you know, they've been around me since I've been on council and been the mayor. They already know this, but, you know, I'm like impatient on a lot of these things. And I know they take time, but I don't want to be still talking about this same thing 10 years from now. You know, I'd like to be able to show something that we, you know, that we're doing that a lot of people can use, and
That
like I
people
said,
see.
I think the old Salem thoroughfare there is going to probably be a little bit too ambitious for 1 year, but certainly putting together some of these sidewalks like where Brendan lives up there at Summer Suite, out here along Union Road, you know, those kind of things. I think we're starting to get some traction.
Okay.
So just kind of off the top of my head there.
No, that's good. Thanks, Mike. Seth, anything to add to that before we move on?
I mean, I will say I came into the position last August and was tasked with implementing Plan Clayton, and you know, not knowing the community as well as most of you folks, that seemed daunting. I think as a planner, I would have approached the task in much the same way, but I really had this idea. I wanted to get this group together to kind of talk through and really get buy-in and what makes sense. Where can we help the most people? You know, so I thought that was important. And I think everything that's being said in terms of where can we kind of complete these critical community linkages, you know, that if it's a short stretch of sidewalk on Main Street, like Derek and Mendy said, or, you know, as the mayor said, you know, kind of connecting people to convenience stores or other opportunities, you know, from Summer Suite to Salem, I think makes perfect sense. You know, I know we'll get into this. I think a lot of these goals are interrelated. You know, how do we improve the parks, you know, and how do we prepare ourselves for the development that we all hope for and we all are expecting to see. So yeah, that's really my approach. Brendan, as you know, as a council member, do you have anything to add, you know, to what I have said or to what Mike has said? And before that, I just want to recognize that Kim Williams is on the meeting now. So.
Oh, good. Only thing I would add, you know, I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. Yeah, looking at it from a, you know, short term, long term, you know, for the aspect of, you know, size of the project, cost, and everything. Yeah, I do agree that, you know, it might be good to start off with, you know, kind of filling those gaps. That's, you know, in those areas where you got to get, you know, closer to where I'm at, or around Valley Brook, at Union, areas like that, be a lot easier to set those up because you kind of have some sidewalks all around it, and some and things like that. So there's kind of already a beginning of the infrastructure. But yeah, in fact, I drove back from the gym on Old Salem today, and of course, when that's snowy, it's a little more interesting. But yeah, that's a major connection road for the Northmont area, and you know, it being predominantly in Clayton, So I think that would, long term have a major positive impact for the community.
Okay, good. Good. Well, hey, Derek and Mindy, thanks. That was really good work you did. I was going to ask, so Seth, one thing that probably is good to know as we talk about these 4 committees, and I'm going to pull back the agenda real quick. But as we talk about the committees, your idea here is that you're going to take the feedback we give, and then you're going to come back to us, correct, to talk about what you think is doable short term and what, just kind of, you're going to give us feedback as to where this fits into the city's plan, correct? Is that right?
Well, I think the committee is going to put together the implementation plan through these discussions. Obviously, what's our funding look like? I mean, those are important questions. But I think what we need to do through this process is to identify some projects, put them in the plan, and then I think behind the scenes I can start to have those discussions as we get a kind of a vetted list put together.
Okay.
Is there anything on our list that doesn't even make sense from a fundability standpoint? And we can work through that. And I kind of see like meeting 4 and 5 is where we'll get more into that. But
Okay.
at some point we're gonna in the next meeting or two, we're gonna start to score these, and but I can have those discussions behind the scenes just to kind of get a feel for how realistic it is to fund some of them. And we can adjust our list at that point.
Well, I would speak for the group. I don't think we're going to take offense like if you say like something's not going to work. I mean,
Yeah.
This is, we know there's limited money and time and all that. So I think probably at the end of this, we just want to know kind of what stuff we put forward probably can be expected short term,
Mm-hmm.
and also what stuff is aspirational too, right? So that'd be good.
Okay.
All right, good. Hey, Brendan and Kim, I think you guys are up for number 2, the central cores.
All right. Evening, everyone. Kim, glad you jumped on.
I'm here. I had to run down to Cincinnati Airport, pick up my sister-in-law. We got stuck in the snowstorm and turned around and stuff. So I'm in the car. Brendan, I'm going to let you just take the lead on it. I'll jump in if there's anything that I want to add, but I think we're pretty much on the same page.
Okay. Yep. Nope.
Go ahead
Safe
and
travels.
mute myself back.
Yep. And actually, and at some point here, I'll share my screen with a map. So for us, we really just looked at 3 goals of our first subcommittee meeting was identifying the city cores, also identifying what would really be more like a city entrance, looking at the map, and then also identifying the markers that would be at those cores and entrances. And let me never done this of share screen, so let's see if I can. Okay, select a window. Okay. Okay, can everyone see the central core map?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So first thing, of identifying the courts and entrances, and this kind of shows circled what was in the initial plan. Clayton had, quite a few, and a lot of them within the circles, you would have multiple ones. So, we looked at it as, well, this is a little busy and some of these overlap. So, and it would be kind of confusing. I mean, some of these would be, one after another next to each other of things that would be, on this map, a core. So we broke it down into these areas that were on the initial plan. Going numerically, and this goes, as you can see, south to north, we'll kind of go through these and, what we feel that they are and the attributes of it. Number 1, we consider the southern city entrance on Main Street, State Route 48. It's high traffic volume. There's currently the large Welcome to Clayton sign there, which is a great entrance to the city. There's you look around there. There's little room for public use development. It's also an area, you've really got four municipalities pretty close to each other. Clayton, and then the opposite side of Westbrook is and Dogleg is Harrison Township. You're a stone's throw away from Trotwood, and also right over the river is Butler Township. Right over the river where you see the Irish Club and everything like that. So it's really, there's not a whole lot of that's Clayton, and it's not one where there's much, public development or anything in that immediate area. So we looked at that as and also, not a whole lot of pedestrian traffic, just with the way those roads are, the traffic is, and what's around there. So looked at that really as more of a city entrance. And maybe could build out from that, but not looking at that as really like a core. Just north of that on 48, number 2 is, along Main Street, State Route 48 stretch. And it also includes the intersection of Old Salem, kind of ending at that area if you go in south to north. High traffic volume. There's currently multiple small size retail, dining, fitness, health businesses within there. It's also got the green space in front of Stillwater Center, which has, I know within the city, and we maybe even brought that up at the last meeting here of, potential of a park or some sort of, public use for that. There's a high potential for, even more pedestrian use along the sidewalk paths, and also if we added a small park. Obviously, just with the current traffic there, and there's a lot already set up, maybe for that. You look at the building that houses Boston Stoker and Casanos. They've got some outdoor seating. Obviously within Randolph Plaza, there's a few things there, especially like the Mexican restaurant out front, across the street at Ray's, things like that. So it's a long stretch, but we'd still kind of consider that maybe like a Main Street city core. Number 3 is really we're identifying that as the city entrance at Main Street 48 and Garber Road. Again, high traffic volume, major intersection close to, Premier North, formerly Good Sam North, Meyer, I-70, right there in Inglewood as well. Again, there's little room for any future, public use development as far as on what is in the city of Clayton. Also, the other sides with Inglewood, it's a lot of the things I identified earlier. So public use, walkability for some stuff. There's not a huge amount of increase that would happen. But one thing there with the traffic, you also have the RTA stops right at the intersection with Garber. That could, for that, and we'll get into some, furniture and some markers later, but might be a good kind of secondary spot of a welcome entrance to the city, and maybe put some signage for, for some markers or some landmarks within the city of Clayton. So, number 4 is the government center. Got 4 separate buildings with that. We have the administrative building that houses police as well, the fire station, and the 2 service buildings. Really small, small potential for public use development for that. And we only hold really 1 or 2 kind of bigger events that bring large public gatherings right there. Main one being when we do our service, police, and fire open house, usually, right at the beginning of October. So viewing that, obviously it's a government center, so there's going to be always a core aspect to that. It's obviously on the edge of the city, across the street, right catty corner is the Northmont administrative building, but that's in Inglewood. So again, there's not a whole lot that would bring the public on a very consistent basis there that we would kind of consider that as a major core. But again, it being the government center would still, just because of that, be considered, somewhat of a core. Number 5, you got the old village city center. You got multiple small businesses within a small area, nearby park, the old Clayton Hardscrabble Park, and it's really that classic small city center feel. So with that, obviously we're identifying it. That's the biggest thing of what we're doing right now. But looking at that neighborhood, we'll have to kind of figure out how do we tie that neighborhood in with the rest of the city, because I think maybe at times it kind of is almost as a forgotten part of it, but also keeping it that classic feel. So figuring out how to do that. Number 6, if you look at that's consider that Northmont North Clayton one. Obviously holds Northmont High School, the middle school, all the sports facilities on that campus. It's got the Village of North Clayton, which is, currently already has single-family homes and some business, and that will be potentially expanding out even more. So as a multi-use development area. Borders, the YMCA in Sinclair, and pretty much the CLEPS Early Learning Center. High traffic. It's got the bike path along US 40. So obviously this would be considered a major core within everything within that area. Number 7 is the area just north of National Road. It's currently agricultural. It does have, Landis Meats, Bushel and Peck Market, which, they're, mainstays in the area. Bring some more traffic into that area. As discussed earlier, there's some potential residential development going in there. Also, what would tie into a potential commercial development as well, and maybe that would more tie into number 6 if we did that. But still looking at that, really asking, would this be considered a current or a future true core? Especially it being right there by number 6 of that Northmont core. So could see that area maybe tying into it, being right next to it, but of kind of considering that a core, even if it turns more residential. That's kind of a question there. Number 8, that's the area just west of Main Street, State Route 48, and the Sweet Potato Road intersection. Again, it's currently agricultural. Borders, it's really a part of that Tri-City area of the 3 cities of the Northmont area, Inglewood, Union, and obviously is in Clayton. The sports fields at the former O.R. Edgington Elementary property, that is all in Inglewood. There's a potential for some future residential development. We had one that was looking at it a couple years ago. It didn't fall through. Still is an area that, within Union has obviously developed some residential. So would think that, there's a high probability at some point that residential would go in there. Again, would this be considered a current or future core with what's in that area? Big, like I said, big potential for residential development and things, but considering a core, not sure about that. And then number 9, the last one, that's a northern agricultural area right at the Phillipsburg Union Road and Putnam Road intersection. Current agricultural. In fact, Mike, you'll get a kick out of this. I pulled up Google Maps just to kind of look up what was in that area in the street view, and from Google Maps Street View, there was still one of your old campaign signs at that intersection, at least on
oh my God,
on Google. So yeah, I think it was from when you first ran for council. So it's been a few years.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's funny.
That area, obviously that's very agricultural around there. I would assume that there's little infrastructure. Really, I would venture to guess there's probably homes there that are probably on well and propane. I would guess, just knowing that area. Don't really see that as any kind of a core or much of an area that is going to have much any development. And then really, if you look at other parts of the Plan Clayton document and calling for how much agricultural we would like to keep, it includes that. So that was kind of a head scratcher. In fact, when Kim and I did our first subcommittee meeting, we both kind of compared notes and think we had some question marks in a few of those areas of, is this really a core? So that's really, we figured the first thing for us was most important was identifying these cores. But then looking at what we, what we're doing as central cores, really almost from a hub and spoke method of looking at things, we're almost one of, okay, here's where it begins with a lot of this. And it ties into a lot of the, a lot of the other subcommittees, with the connectiveness, with parks and things like that. So, we felt it was very important, first off, to identify these cores. And then last thing was really markers that would be at these cores and entrances. First thing, I think we felt that an extremely important part was utilizing the Clayton brand. We have, and you see it on a lot of our stuff. It has, Clayton, and the O is a sun. In my opinion, I think that's still, it's not dated. So I think and this is maybe just kind of tying into some other things. So, if we kind of consider that our brand, as long as, as well as that, maybe that green color, really going with that or whatever we would see as the brand. Signage, identifying the areas, that's something, figuring out, having some sort of new signage, identifying, okay, this is the Northmont core, that this is the old Clayton core, things like that, of just putting those. You see that in some cities where, and even some bigger cities where they have the different neighborhoods and boroughs, they'll have, even in Dayton, you see that. Obviously, Dan, you have a lot of experience with being a county commissioner and traveling a lot through the city of Dayton and all the different neighborhoods. A lot of them have, have signage when you enter it, so you kind of know, oh, here's South Park, here's, the East End, things like that.
Right.
So signage, I think, would be a very important thing. Also, directional signage to major areas. That'd be a big thing in some of those city entrances, in those areas, as well as some of the other cores as well. And then lastly, we had furniture at some of those, at the walkways and the common gathering areas. That can include benches, trash receptacles, especially if you want to get walkability here, people walking their pets. And you'll see in a lot of cities they've added pet litter receptacles as well, and ones that have the bags to pick it up. So of doing that, and I think that also ties into the connected part of the city of putting that not just in the cores, but along a lot of the walkways and along potential bike paths and sidewalks, just of adding those that we know there's going to be some high traffic. With that, we want to have, I think, a consistent appearance within the cores, and that again goes into some of the other into the other parts of the committee as well. And again, with all those, really utilizing the Clayton brand. So people are going to see, if they see benches and trash cans and things like that, and they see, at some point that little, the Clayton, that green color, the Clayton logo and things like that, they're going to know, okay, we're still in the city of Clayton, and here's all the neat things that the city is doing. So that is really all that I had. Kim, is there anything else that you wanted to add, or maybe that I left out?
No, I think you hit everything that we had talked about. I'm good.
Any members of the committee have anything to add? Well,
Hey, Brendan, I have just one thing to add. When I'm looking at the map here, and I'm pretty sure you guys probably talked about this, but I think it probably got glossed over. On the core center of number 6, I believe it was, that includes that whole Hoke
Yeah.
Road corridor too. And, with, there's some development there,
Correct.
obviously, with the Walmart and with Goodwill coming there, and a lot of that stuff's for sale. Of course, like a lot of our borders that we borderline, that's some of those areas we cross with Inglewood, where we're on one side of the street, they're on the other. So did you guys talk about that at all, about the Hoke corridor?
We didn't, and I'll pull that. I took off the share screen. Let me get that back. Here we go.
It's lumped in with the villages up there, and I think that's in the right place, but I think that deserves to just make sure we keep that on, because that actually we've put in several grants and things, as to try to start working on that already.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. What's interesting, if you look at, the part in 6 that's circled and what's kind of marked in that proposed core along Hoke, it actually, looking at it, kind of ends at Wenger. So what's interesting about that is that actually would really end at where we have like the new Goodwill and obviously Walmart and the thing around there. So, but yeah, that's definitely something, and to consider that part of that core, and would tie into also getting things connected. I know that intersection of Wenger and Hoke is an ongoing discussion, and I think you had mentioned of applying for grants for us to improve that. But thank you for bringing that up. I guess kind of overlooked that. It's and that's really a connected area right there to, and again, the parks there obviously is Inglewood, but it's still, we don't want to discount that, just because this is developing in Clayton, because also I think that's something to look at with having a neighboring municipality, and really one within the Northmont community, of them having a park. That's a big public gathering area that would bring a lot of especially foot traffic. So yes, thank you for bringing that up, and I'll put that in my notes for number 6.
Okay.
Hey, Brendan.
I do agree with you. I do agree with you on one thing though. That number 9, I don't see it developing much out there. Maybe some homes or something, out there, but that's pretty far out there.
Yeah.
So anyway, good job on everything though.
Yeah, this is great. Hey, Brendan and Kim, I can ask you, I'll just ask this question. In terms of the, potential for development around the Caterpillar property, and I know when Jack will put it like on LinkedIn, the properties that are available around there for further development. I mean, could that be considered another core that we, obviously that could lend itself to job creation and income tax growth for the city? But how about that?
I think it kind of depends on what goes in there. I know it was rezoned either last year or the year before. The property owner and the realtor requested that we rezone it to commercial than what it currently is of agricultural. So, and I know that's kind of how it's being marketed. And me living back in the Summer Sweet plat, that would, I think a big thing there. I think it has potential. It just depends on what goes in there. If it's something more along like a commercial facility, something like a warehouse, things like that, because obviously Caterpillar is a large warehouse, and this is maybe getting a little off topic, but I think the Dayton area is prime, especially around here, to continue to almost be like, if anyone's ever been around Indianapolis and around the highway there, that's distribution center city right there. So, that'd be a little different if something like that went in right there. I wouldn't see that being considered a core. But let's say if something goes in there more of a commerce park, or even residential or something multi-use, then that could definitely be looked at as a core, especially being along a main road of 49.
Yeah, no, in my personal opinion, I just think that there's a ton of opportunity, and I'm preaching to the choir here. I realize, because the city's worked hard. Not only did the city work hard to attract Caterpillar, but I know the city's really trying to push some interest in properties around there. So hopefully we can capture that as part of this overall plan that we need to keep doing that. So hey,
excellent point.
I'd ask one more thing too, and I asked this, like, so on number 1, 2, and 3, and I'll throw this, maybe I'll put it as a statement. Would it make sense for the city to almost, what's the right word, almost prioritize the key properties along that corridor that have the most potential for, return on investment? And I know it's not like there's acres there, but as we've talked about in the last meeting, and I know Seth and I and Mike have talked about this, there are some properties that could be repurposed for either retail or some additional use. And I guess would it be smart to really kind of identify the key properties along there that could add value?
I do know, Mike, do we own that one, used to be that old like lawnmower service center, and then it was like a secondhand shop.
No, I know which one you're talking about, but we do not own that.
Yeah.
It's for sale now.
Okay.
Laura's Loft.
Yeah, and I know. Yeah, that's right. And I know there's some issues with potential prior, like the the repair facility might not have been disposing of some things properly. I know that was a potential issue that was discussed, but yeah, and then I know the old the old animal hospital that they just built their new facility there at Old Salem in Maine. Their old property has been up for sale as well. Those were two that are vacant, and right along Main Street. But yeah, I don't believe Seth. Yes, yeah, Seth or Mike, do we own anything along that stretch?
I don't believe we own anything down at that end. I believe we still own a property.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, we still own a property up there across from the Miami Valley North facility, which was a residential. I think we own that one, and that may be it.
Okay. Yeah.
We kind of talked about that with our group, with the when we said prioritize and demolish and go through and try to figure out what's savable, what could be reused, repurposed, what's up to code, what's not. We talked about that a little bit with our group too.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a key issue, because really, as you look at the vision for Main Street, kind of what Plan Clayton identifies, and what our new zoning code that we're working on is trying to get us toward is really seeing Main Street as a potential true downtown for Clayton, because we don't have that, where you might see two-story buildings close to the street maybe narrows a little, maybe you reduce speeds, maybe you have parking on the street, if you can imagine that. But in order to do things like that, I mean, I think you have to purchase properties to assemble them for future development in that way, or control properties that you can kind of reach out to the right developers to do. That's a very long-term vision of Main Street. that Plan Clayton kind of envisions. But I think that's ultimately the plan for Main Street. And then the other cores that you guys are looking at, Brendan and Kim, because of the way that Clayton became a city in terms of annexing the rest of Randolph Township, you have all these different pockets of community.
Yeah.
And it's trying to find potential, and maybe not tomorrow, but like, where could there potentially be cores where people can gather? You know, maybe there's residential, maybe there's some commercial, but just gathering points, not true downtowns, but places where folks can gather. So that's kind of the vision for Central Cores.
Yeah, that was kind of how we began things, just because, you know, as looking at the map, I mean, the city is an L, is basically with jagged edges. So it provides, it provides those, difficulties, but at the same time, it provides the potential of multiple cores. Whereas if we were, I mean, you think of, especially, think about out in like Preble County, and there's a lot of those smaller cities out there that are, and a lot more agricultural, but you kind of have that the old feeling of you have one main downtown,
yep,
and stuff in that, in a few square miles, and then everything kind of builds out, and that's where it's more,
exactly,
agricultural and rural, and some subdevelopments and things like that. So while, there's a part of me that maybe would wish we were set up that way, one reality is we aren't, but also I think it provides the opportunity. I mean, and one thing for us too is we have two, we've got a national highway and two state routes, within our city. So, it's so that definitely is a big part of the potential of multiple ones.
Yeah, and I think so much of the core development will probably occur with future projects that come through. I mean, if you look at Hayburn National and what's kind of in front of us right now, when we were looking at trying to do a mixed use of residential and commercial, to where maybe you don't have to drive as far, or maybe you can walk to the commercial aspect. But I think what you and Kim touched on in terms of how we set the table for that, I think is perfect.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, well done. Well done. I would say, just anecdotally, I mean, I would put forward that the city wouldn't necessarily have to own properties. Maybe I know people know this, but maybe it's even talking to the property owners that have some potential for reuse and saying, hey, have you thought about doing something different, right? I know we looked at the map, where Montgomery County has their Stillwater Center, and they've got a pretty big frontage there. And I don't speak for the county anymore because I'm not a county commissioner anymore. But one discussion could be, hey, is there any opportunity to leverage any of that excess space that you have at the Stillwater Center to do something different? And they might say no, or they might say yes, or they might say, well, let's talk to each other. And so Brendan mentioned he pulled out Google Maps for that number 9. I did the same thing for North Main. And when you look at it from the 10,000 foot view, there are some open spaces there that could have some potential, and it doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, it doesn't mean the city has to own all that. It could mean the city could just start to engage in conversations with the owners of the properties, right, and say, hey, could we do something that could benefit us both? So. Oh,
that's a good point. Of course, Dan, I think someone on council has a little bit of pull still with the county commissioner's office. So.
Good point. We'll see if we can work a couple different angles. Good point.
So, yep. Anyone else? Kim, was there anything from those notes that you wanted to add?
I'm good. I know it was really difficult to hear a little bit, but did you touch on looking at Main Street as kind of like the main city core and the style of development that goes there? I know we had talked about traffic patterns and things like that and the flow of traffic, but I'm sorry, I didn't hear everything.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, and I know more. Seth definitely touched on that. a lot
Okay.
with looking at Main Street as that overlay and doing some things of changing up traffic, lowering the speed limit, maybe even, putting some street parking and things like that. So yes, we did.
Oh, okay, good.
Well,
Got
hey,
a lot of road noise.
hey, Kim, thank you. Thank you
Safe
for
travels.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say, Kim and Brendan, thanks. You both did great on this, and this is
Good job.
a really good foundation. So well done.
All right.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yep.
You're welcome.
All right, let's see. Let's pull the agenda back up here real quick. All right, the third one is Seth and I. I will pull the document up. Hey, Seth, do you want to talk about this a little bit as I pull the document up?
I'll let you take the reins, unless
Okay.
you're talking about Seth D. It's
Okay.
always confusing.
Okay. All right. So here's what, can everybody see this document?
Mhm.
This is the subcommittee that Seth and I put together, and I've got one more thing I can pull up too, but I won't read this word for word, but Seth and I kind of put our thoughts down. Seth really made the point, I think it was a great point. He said, given the budget, we'd have to work with, for the next year, we should really figure out what stuff within that budget can shore up the existing park system, and really ranking kind of, I think he's trying to say like what's most impactful for the existing parks. And I'm sure the city would be thinking about that anyway, but I think it's something it's a good thing to remind the city to do. The second one is that, let's see, second one is that we probably cannot roll the money that may be allocated to us over to another year. Several of our parks have some fairly inexpensive opportunities to increase their exposure marketing wise, their usage rates, and funding source opportunity. And so, I think both Seth and I, like everybody here, probably have been in most of the Clayton parks. And I think and Seth, I think what you're trying to say here is that, if we can kind of move the needle on just letting people know where these parks are and kind of how to get to them, that's probably a good thing to do in the short term. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, from a marketing perspective and based on what Seth D shared with us with regards to resource allocation for the next fiscal year, I think I want to say he threw out the number 50,000 maybe as being, maybe we could ask for that, something to that effect. So I started thinking about the marketability of the parks and marketing them to then attract more revenue opportunities.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. And then my thoughts on this, when Seth and I looked at the Plan Clayton document, I did have one, disagreement's not the right word. I would say that the recommendation in the Plan Clayton document to connect the existing parks to me, I don't know that that's something that should really take a bunch of time and effort. I think probably the most relevant thing is to connect people to one park or another, particularly, I mean, as Derek and Mindy said, trying to in terms of the walkability example before, trying to get people to point A to point B, particularly pedestrian wise. I think that might be a better strategy. I don't know that the idea of, in that Plan Clayton document, of taking all 5 parks and looping them together gets us much. And that's my, it's my personal opinion. But here are the short-term goals that we talked about, that Seth and I talked about. We, according to Mike, we understand that the city wants to keep Meadowbrook as a golf course. So knowing that, could the city hire a planning firm to look at if the golf course, if the policy position is to keep the golf course, operating as a golf course, which is fine. Is there some way we could take those 71 acres and incorporate other uses that citizens would really find valuable? For example, whether it's adding some more housing, or whether it's putting some kind of a kids park in there, or walking paths where people wouldn't get hit by a golf ball, that kind of thing. It'd be probably pretty important to make sure that didn't happen. But there's 71 acres there, and maybe it could become a golf course plus something else. And so, but I think that would really take, I think both Seth and I believe that would take some kind of plan to really, a planning firm to come in and see if that could happen. Second short-term goal would be to undertake efforts to provide better access to the parks. But we said special attention should be looked at with Westbrook Park because it's, it's got the disc golf course back there. And it's tough if you don't live in that, in my opinion, if you don't live in that neighborhood, it's really hard to know that it's even there. And it's harder to know how to get to it. And so if there's another way to get there from Westbrook Road, Seth said that there was a service road access there. And so maybe that would be something to look at. The third short-term goal we said was we both Seth and I thought that they kind of need new identities really not only undertake a reuse plan for Meadowbrook, but also I could have written this better, but really also look at Hardscrabble Park and Westbrook Park and see what we could do to breathe new life into those parks. And I know there's a lot, a lot of us have been familiar with Hardscrabble Park. I mean, for years that place was, and maybe it is, I haven't been there for a while, but I know, it was really full of life with youth baseball and a lot of activities. And I think if the city could really kind of bring somebody in to say, hey, we've got both Hardscrabble, Westbrook, and Meadowbrook are great places. How can we breathe new life into those places? So we thought that was good. And then the long-term goal, and I'm going to pull up a map here, would be to join with the Northmont communities, Englewood and Union, and support Five Rivers Metro Park's proposed plan to connect the northern communities with the regional bike path system. As Seth and I put here, it's going to take a lot of leadership locally and frankly a lot of money to do this. And I'll pull up the map to show you what it looks like. But we feel like if you could connect, behind Premier at Jake Grossknuckle Park to the regional bikeway system, and frankly that system ends at Shoot Mill Road and Riverside Drive. But when I show you this map, you'll see how that could get connected. We think that would be something that the Northmont communities should really link arms on, and to try to make that happen. It's going to take some time, but I'll talk about that in a second. Second long-term goal would be what Mindy and Derek talked about: improve the bike and pedestrian options. And the third one was in support of the Plan Clayton document, goal number 3, identify future green space potential within the city. So let me pull this up real quick. Let's see here. Sorry about that. Let's see. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go ahead and talk you through this. I can't pull the map up right now. But essentially what Metro Parks has done, and Seth and I got in a call with their chief planner about 3 weeks ago. They have identified a path from Riverside and Shoot Mill up along what they call the Shiloh Conservation Area, which is kind of then go. Seth, tell me if I'm right here, but it kind of goes up on the right-hand side of the Stillwater River, and they bring it back over on the Stillwater River, and it goes and it connects behind Stillwater, the county's facility, up to Jake Grossknuckle Park. And the sticker on this is a little bit high. I mean, I think every mile of trail is about $1 million, and so I think they're talking about $8 to $10 million to do that. This shouldn't be the city's sole responsibility, because I know the city could not afford that. But again, if there was some kind of a movement from all the communities in the northern part of the county, it might be something that could actually get done. So I think that's our long-term goal, and I think that's the recommendation that Seth and I have. So any questions?
Hey guys, one thing I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm talking about on some of the small scale stuff that you had talked about, like just making the parks better and breathing new life into them and everything. We have a fairly active Parks Commission.
Yep.
And I think, I don't want to speak for them, but I think they actually are the type folks that look for work. So if there's something that we think we could do, like I said, it'd be, they're not going to build the bike path behind to Gross Nickel, anything like that. But in our own parks, if we can come up with some small scale stuff, like you were saying, to help breathe some new life into it, or bring some activities in, or just make them better.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure everybody knows that we have that, relatively small but interested resource.
Mike, do they have a budget then, or do they have their own line item or anything? Do they have any money?
They do have some money, but I'm not sure what it is. I want to say I think it was what Dan had said. I want to say around 50,000. Does that sound right, Brendan? I know we gave them some money, but I earmarked some money for them, but I just can't say how much it was. I forget.
That sounds right when we were working on the budget back in November, but can't remember 100% what they would.
Yeah, so it's not going to be 50,000. Goes pretty quick. It's not going to be anything huge, but we could definitely. I'm thinking if we could. if we continue the joint effort here, we might be able to get something done.
Let me throw something at you, Mike. I'm curious because I don't have the institutional memory any more than Seth Dorman does, because I've only been here 4 years. So you drive into Meadowbrook. Obviously, that's a source of contention. People want us to sell that. I understand why we keep it, and I support keeping it. But you know how the cities go with regards to selling that. It's a tax waste, blah, blah, blah. You roll in right to the left before you go up the parking lot. How come there's never been any thought of volleyball courts? That was one of the Plan Clayton ideas at a micro level. And, sand pits thrown down and volleyball, because wouldn't there be an opportunity for a tournament of sorts, money, publicity, marketing? Has that ever been explored using that land?
We've never really talked about that particular part of the land. We've talked, most of the stuff around Meadowbrook has been reverted back to golf. I've thrown out a lot of different ideas, and others have too. Pickleball. I don't know if volleyball's ever been in particular, but things like that. And one of the things that, our former city manager, and I got to tell you, I think Rick, I think so much of him. I think he did such a great job for us. But, Rick was hyper focused on golf because he's a golfer.
Sure.
And I think, I don't think he purposely, sabotaged, any of the conversations or anything, but Rick wasn't quite as open as some of the rest of us are to other things. The biggest thing you have to worry about on things like that is, like Dan said, getting hit with a golf ball,
Sure.
It gets kind of dangerous, but there's other things that, I think could go in. I think that's a perfect idea. For one thing, that would be relatively cheap.
Mm-hmm.
To do. That's the biggest thing. That's something we could probably do ourselves. But things like maybe a splash pad, where the old pool was there, because that's kind of protected a little bit by the clubhouse and everything. Or something that I had brought up a few years ago, I still think it's a good idea. And again, there's grant money available for some of this stuff, but we had, I had gotten a brochure for basically it was a playground for handicapped kids. And I think that would be a great draw for that area too. And it'd be somewhat protected by the clubhouse there. There's not too many golf balls flying right by there. So there's small things like that. I think we're open to, as long as it's the right, as long as it's safe and as long as it's the right, pick for us there. I don't think anybody's opposed to that.
Sure.
When I have belonged to Meadowbrook for 100 years, it seems like, and we lived for a time over off on Satellite there, Lynchmere, Satellite, Honeybrook area. And when the city took over Meadowbrook, everybody was so excited because they thought, oh, they'll put another entrance in there, like right down from, you know, the satellite, Lynchmere, all those. They'll have an entrance, they'll put a big park, they'll, you know, have a community pool possibly. There were tennis courts there that for, I don't know, 10, 12 years never were taken care of. And they thought, oh, they'll put the tennis courts back in. So everybody was excited. And then it, you know, nothing ever happened there. So I think there's interest.
Well, there's definitely interest, but and this is a whole nother discussion. We could get really sidetracked on this quickly, but I can tell you that the bottom line is all of those things are really expensive.
Right.
And a golf course is expensive in itself, but, you know, pools are, you know, I live in, well, as you know, here in Valley Brook, and they have, you know, we spend a lot of money keeping this little pool going. I mean, they're just a very expensive thing. Something like a tennis court or volleyball courts wouldn't be quite as expensive because you don't have a lot of maintenance there. But, you know, when Meadowbrook was gifted to the city, it was done not because Larry was making too much money on it. You know, he was making no money on it and losing money every year. I think he told me, I could be wrong on this, but I think he told me he lost about $1 million a year on it.
Wow.
Because, you know, of all the upkeep and things that I might be stating that.
And not enough members.
But it was a large amount of money.
Yeah.
And then finally, you know, he had to, you know, kind of let it just basically, you know, gave it away is exactly what he did. So, you know, I think everybody's open to stuff. We just don't know what exactly to do that we can afford to maintain.
Hey, Mike, to Mindy's point, is there, I mean, not that you just hire a consultant to do it, to hire a consultant, but is there some way the city could really take Meadowbrook and say, all right, look, let's come up with the 2 or 3 or 4 most doable, you know, value adds to that property that people would like to see. I mean, it seems that it's a real gift that 71 acres is in the city.
It is.
And I guess the question is, how do you maximize it, right?
Well, that's just something we need to do.
Well, I think you're also seeing growth in community events there, so it's really becoming more of a community center as opposed to just a public golf course. And
that's true.
And I think some of that can grow, but I could see potential recreational uses there as well. And then maybe that's something we get into some planning on that property, kind of our master plan for that. You know, how the city best utilizes that.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think there's potential there, but I really believe Meadowbrook is I think that's a discussion on its own because I mean, it's
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hey, just I pulled this map up, and it's funny because when you and Seth and I went through this with the folks from Metro Parks, it was easier when they were telling us the map because I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly which route we're looking at here. But what Metro Parks has done, everybody, is they really have a goal of trying to take the bike pass system and fill in the gaps to benefit the communities. And so when they've mapped out the route from Clayton to the rest of the system, you know, they've started to propose a path for that. And again, this is an aspirational goal. It's you know, we on the back of the envelope, they said it'd be probably $8 to $10 million to get this thing from, you know, Gross Knuckle Park behind Premier Health down to the back end of Wickers and Garden Center in Dayton. But I think you're going to see us advocate to put in this report that we want to see that we think the community should really advocate for this, because my sense is people would support. That people know it's not going to happen overnight, but I think our bike pass system is one of the best things we have in this community. And the more miles of path we put in, it pays back all the miles that have been put in before. So So this is a recommendation that Seth and I would like to see, I think, in the final report. So.
And I'm looking at my notes, Dan. I think there were several properties in the city of Clayton that they need to kind of complete that Stillwater. And I wrote down 2 million local match, but that's kind of Clayton. That's the Northmont community area. I'd say Clayton, Inglewood, potentially Union, which is a lot. But if there was a way to raise that money between those jurisdictions, I mean, that it would open this area up to just miles and miles and miles of bike trail. It'd be pretty fantastic.
Yeah, agree. Good deal. Well, and Mike Stevens, just FYI, if you want Metro Parks to come out and present to council on this, I think it might be good for council to see the plan, because it would give them, I think, an opportunity to get excited about it too. So
good idea.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So I think we're at any questions on our report? No. Okay. All right. The final committee or subcommittee. What's the final one, Seth?
Great Streets. That's
okay,
me and Mike's.
Okay, yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that one? Okay.
Okay. And I'll bring up maybe.
Yep. There you go.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Bring up Mike and I's memo. So Mike and I, we had an initial discussion on January 22nd, and we had our official meeting on February 3rd. We kind of discussed the breadth of our area, discussion and the interconnectedness of great streets and infrastructure with the other primary goals of Plan Clayton. We kind of approached potential projects around great streets from the perspective of some near-term tangible projects that can move the city's vision forward, and some additional planning that we think needs to occur to help inform future development within the city. So some of the physical projects, they're going to sound familiar, as I think some of them, again, are interconnected with the other goal areas of Plan Clayton. But finish and connect existing gaps in sidewalk. An example we talked about was Union and Summer Suite. Consider reducing speeds on certain critical streets in Clayton, National Road near the school campus, Main Street, especially as development occurs, that might encourage heavy or additional foot traffic. Upgrade the arterial streets with new lighting fixture and wayfinding standards. We're thinking about Main Street, Union, Hoke, National there. Upgrade residential streets with new pedestrian scale lighting fixture standard. And these are all standards that I'm kind of working on behind the scenes, and so kind of just doing that in a phased way. Work toward burying all utilities that can be buried as roads are reconstructed and as developments are proposed. And gets rid of some of that visual clutter on our important corridors. Strengthen and foster working relationships with our neighboring cities and the Northmont community for continuity of infrastructure and pedestrian amenities. And a nice tie-in really to what you Dan and Seth P were saying, Seth Pallas were saying with the regional trail system. Upgrade or provide crosswalks at critical intersections to be identified. And then some of the additional planning, and it's kind of call outs in Plan Clayton, the city of Clayton thoroughfare plan. We've been kind of using the Montgomery County official thoroughfare plan for years. And so we think it's time maybe to look at a thoroughfare plan for the city. Access management plan for certain roadways. We're thinking about 49, potentially 48, National Road. So that you don't have curb cuts, in such short distances, short intervals. A green infrastructure study, and this came out of Plan Clayton, but looking at landscaping alternatives for handling stormwater runoff that could save money in the long term, wouldn't require the expensive infrastructure investments, things like rain gardens, bioswales. And those are things that we can look at as new developments come online as well. Water system analysis. So let's study the water system. We get it from Montgomery County, City of Dayton. I think we get some from Inglewood, possibly from Union as well. And so just study the overall system and look where the deficiencies are and start planning for some systematic improvements there. Same thing for sanitary sewer. Work on a signage standards manual. So we're talking street signs. I know we've got a street sign that we've been systematically replacing. It's got our logo, kind of our sun on it. We're looking at maybe possibly changing that to a slightly different look. Park signs, wayfinding, identification for future districts. So as part of kind of moving forward from Plan Clayton, we're working on the zoning code update, and that kind of identifies a couple different district areas. And so we call it Old Clayton, but the folks that live in that area would like to see it be called the Historic Clayton District. So that would be one. Main Street would be a district. Moving on from that, just a kind of a street furnishing standards manual, and that kind of ties into what Brendan and Kim came up with in the cores. Trash cans, benches, ash urns, bike racks, bike fix station. If you have a flat tire or something breaks on your bike, you have this little station where you've got some tools that you can use to try to fix it. Planners, electric vehicle charging stations is something Mike and I talked about. Kind of a looking toward the future. Changes to Main Street. We could see some vehicle charging stations as part of that. Street lighting and pole standards manual. Again, as we do these updates, we like to have standards that we can go to and provide, either to a developer or to another agency if it's ODOT or whomever we're working with on a project. So just the mast arms. So we're actually going to be doing some mast arms at 49 in Westbrook when that gets updated. And then for the arterial streets, and then of course residential streets, all those standards would be in this manual. So those are the things that I've come up with, Mike and I, and if you've got any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them.
Yeah, really great, guys. It was kind of kind of the great minds think alike, because a lot of things that Kim and I, kind of touched on, and you guys kind of expanded, on a lot more, and kind of felt that way on mine of like, here's the broad base of what these would be with the cores, and then, glad that, and figured that, other committees would be kind of going more in depth with it being more specialized within theirs.
Well, I agree with Brendan 100% on this, and I actually think that we can use that to make a course of action, because there's several of these ideas surfaced among the different committees, and to me that's really not a coincidence. I think it's something that if there's more than one reason for doing something, then I think we should have our ears perked up and say, well, maybe that is something that we need. Maybe that is a great street and a connected parks,
right, issue.
And I think if we look at the common themes, that can give us a way forward here.
Mm-hmm. Great point.
Hey, Seth, from that, can you pull that list back up again real quick? Just
sure. Are you looking the physical or the planning projects?
I think the planning projects.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there so there's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to say to us, we all kind of said to you, like the short term, long term, what's the short term there?
Well, I think that's the challenge, I think, with great streets. But, some of these things like the standards manuals, I'm already working on and kind of pulling some things together. And I think that can be done in-house. For signage too, we now have the ability to make signage in the service department. Council bought a machine that will actually cut signs and print them on reflective material. And I've got a couple examples in my office. So, I think some of those standards manuals we can do in-house, and certainly some of the signage efforts we can do in-house now too. So.
Okay. So there's a little bit of both. There's short-term stuff and long-term stuff there. Right?
For sure.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, good. Well, thanks. Anybody have any questions on the final subcommittee? Good. Thank you. Thank you both. I think that the last two items we wanted to talk about, one of them was how do we prioritize, how do we rank these proposals? And Seth, do you want to just walk through what you've written there for us?
Yeah, so I think in the interest of time, I guess what I'd like to do is kind of bring that part back around to our assignments. So, and it was kind of in our assignment list anyway for our subcommittee. So if it's okay with the group, can we move on to assignments before adjourning?
Sure.
Okay.
Or yeah, everybody okay with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
So what I'd like each of the subcommittees to do between now and our March meeting is to further refine your list of projects. And what I'd like to ask you guys to do is put together that list and provide it to me so I can create kind of a master list. And what I'm envisioning, I guess, is a master list with some criteria that we're going to talk about at the next meeting to just kind of score and rank those projects. With the idea of meeting for kind of doing just the group doing a score and ranking session or process, which will help really ultimately lead us to an implementation plan for the next 5 years. I need to get a little more direction to you all for, I know mentioned some short term, what we might be able to do this year. And so I want to get maybe a better idea to the group in terms of the monies that might be available for that, or if not, things that we can wrap into that 5-year plan from what we were initially thinking short term. So, so further refine list, get me a copy of that list. As you meet as a subcommittee, can you also provide the report to me? And then when I send out the agenda and the minutes, I'll send out the committee reports as well, just so we can read them ahead of time. And, we might be able to come up with some additional questions at the next meeting. So if you can provide subcommittee reports to me ahead of the next meeting. Initial research. So this one, I'm aware of funding sources for certain things. I think Jack and Amanda, our city manager and our city development director are aware of funding for certain things as well as council. But I'd like each of the subcommittees to maybe dive in and do a little initial research for any potential outside funding sources that maybe we're not aware of or we haven't thought of that might help us accomplish some of these projects and our goals with the implementation. And then finally, just kind of coming prepared to meeting 3 with some criteria for project ranking and evaluation. So we'll kind of bring up that master list and then talk through a little bit how we're going to try to score these to really lead us to that final list for the implementation plan. So any questions on those?
And you want this how soon before the next meeting?
So I'm trying to look at when I sent for meeting 2, when I sent the notice. I think I might have sent that out to you last week. Can I get it? I mean, is a week ahead of the next meeting, is that too aggressive, or do you think that's something you guys can meet prior to and then provide me those reports?
I think that's good.
Okay,
Mhm.
so give you three weeks to get your meeting scheduled and completed.
Next meeting, I wasn't there last time, so I don't have the
schedule.
Yeah.
Next one is March 10th.
March 10th, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking at probably March 3rd.
March 3rd would be when I would target kind of sending out the email with the agenda and the minutes, and if I could, the staff, the subcommittee reports.
Okay. Okay.
Good, good. Hey, Seth, in terms of what you had written down on the agenda, you know, kind of just the factors to look at. When you're talking about ranking, are you talking about, you know, cost? You're talking about, I mean, just maybe remind us as we're kind of thinking about the ranking, if it was you, how you'd approach that. And just, there's no right answer here, but just it might help us kind of.
And so I threw some ideas out on the agenda. Obviously, cost of the project could be a deterrent. It could also be one of the reasons it makes the list. Accessibility, and by that I just mean, you know, if there's land or right of way that's needed for the project, you know, that could be a deterrent to a project. The benefit to the largest number of residents, I mean, that's kind of been a reoccurring theme with the subcommittee's reports tonight. Perceived impact to the community, and that kind of goes hand in hand, I think, with the benefit to the largest number. But there could be projects out there that maybe doesn't benefit as many people, but the perception, and I guess the public feeling about the project might help kind of push that onto the list, even if it doesn't benefit a large number of residents. Availability of outside funding sources. I mean, I think that could be something that pushes a project onto the list and maybe toward the top of the list. So those are some things that I was thinking about. I'm sure there's other, you know, ways to measure what would be a successful project, what would be a project that'll make our 5-year plan.
Okay. And would it be a smart thing if as the committees are ranking these projects, if they made some notes about, just like you're saying, they made some notes about why they felt strongly about something, or not, for some, like if they said, hey, we know this is like a long-term, like the bike path, you know, that we were talking about, we know that's not completely in Clayton's control. It's going to be a long-term project. That's not going to happen in the next year, right? Just,
I mean, I think as you refine your lists for the next meeting, putting those thoughts into it would be helpful.
Okay.
What I'd like for each committee to put in their report, or, you know, maybe some additional measures or yardsticks, as I put in the agenda, for how we rank. So I guess I'm not asking you to kind of rank your own projects, but just kind of come up with some criteria for the group to rank during meeting 4.
Okay.
So I kind of see, we'll talk about it. We'll look at a master list, and then on the 4th meeting, I think that will be dedicated, and in my mind, that'll be dedicated solely to scoring the projects.
Okay, good. Anybody have any questions about that? Good.
No.
All right. Well, hey, a great job. I mean, these are really thoughtful comments, and I know people put a lot of work into this, so we're grateful. Well done. Well done.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Good. Good. Any further questions, comments? All right. All right. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.